Charles Poliquin coached his athletes to 12 Olympic medals. What can we take from his approach and apply to our own? Now, Poliquin wasn't a sport-specific coach, he was a strength and conditioning coach. So that's what we're going to hone in on here. Starting very basic, his approach to just sets and reps. So looking at, if you just want strength training with minimal mass, 1 to 5 reps, which is pretty classic strength training. And above that, if we're wanting strength through hypertrophy, he suggested 6 to 15 reps. Again, relatively standard. Okay, but what if we're in a very explosive sport? We want to work fast twitch. Well, he said then we want to do low reps. Now this makes a lot of sense, and it follows on from the Russian authors that I've been reading, talking about how the fast twitch is what gets activated first. So if we are doing sort of high reps, we're going to fatigue that and then get into slow twitch. So if we keep it low rep, we shouldn't fatigue them, we should be able to work them. Okay, so now we're doing lower reps, then he would suggest doing more sets. And the rationale for this is he just loves time under tension. Alternatively, say we had like an endurance athlete doing like a marathon and we wanted to work a slow twitch muscle like the soleus, we'd actually go beyond those numbers he suggested and push more to like 15 to 25 reps because it's going to take so long to fatigue. Interestingly, he also said if you have small muscles, you should do more sets. I'm not too sure why, but that was just another one of the recommendations. So that's more of the structure of how we should be going about our programming. What about how we're actually doing these exercises? So here he says something which is always great to hear and hear confirmation on, that the squeeze is so important. That's classic bodybuilder knowledge. And he is the classic bodybuilder producer. Even though he's the Olympic maker, he also made some excellent physiques. He does say here though that if you're looking at rehab or if you're looking at a beginner, you don't have to focus so much on the contraction, which I think is really great to apply to myself as someone who needs to rehab quite a lot. Something that he said that ran quite contrary to what I expected from someone who's a bit old school was sort of straying away from failure to some extent. Not saying don't go to failure, but he said that if you stop being able to do the same amount of reps, just stop doing the exercise. So don't go, okay, cool, I did 7 pull-ups, now I can only do 5, now I can only do 3. If you can only do 7, then you stop being able to go anymore, just stop. He actually had a really good rationale for this. He said that you're overstraining your nervous system, you're chewing up all of your energy reserves, and you're basically going to see a loss of quality, so a loss of form. And again, that makes a lot of sense. That's sort of the classic critique of going to failure, is it's likely that you're going to start losing form. And generally recommended keeping workouts under an hour to make sure that we're maximizing testosterone and other hormones. Now, I learned all of this by reading the Poliquin principles as a part of my 50 Days to Rebuild challenge, where I read 50 pages of a physio book / exercise book and do 50 minutes of exercise in a day. I also finished the previous book that I was reading, The Science and Practice of Strength Training by Zatsiorsky, but frankly there wasn't too much interesting to cover here. So looking at the exercise portion of things, I really had to focus on trying not to hurt my knee, because last night my knee got really badly aggravated. I tried to put heat on it and stuff, but I woke up very sore still, to the extent that on my morning walk I had to do these tiny little strides just to not aggravate things. It was really sharp pain in my lateral knee. Now I'm thinking this happened from the hinge exercise where I try and screw my feet into the ground, because again I'm collapsing into my lateral foot, so I assume that this collapse is then something's taking up the slack, and in this case I think it might be my LCLs, which are the lateral collateral ligament, just so ligament on the side of the knee. So I did a bit of digging online to sort of see how to manage this, and luckily I actually found a video that was very helpful. Essentially it suggested just balancing on one leg and trying to abduct the other leg. So that was very effective, especially when I tried to focus on keeping my balance sort of on my middle foot, like on that medial side, not just letting it collapse. That's really hard to do, it's really hard to balance, so I didn't get much range, but overall it felt great. And I think something that's really important that came from this is it helped me sort of understand the translation from something that's like closed chain into real life. Because I know that my hips aren't great and I do things like clamshells or side-lying abductions, trying to activate those muscles. And part of the reason I do it like that, as opposed to in this like standing closed chain sort of way, is I know that there's dysfunction at my ankles, my hips, my feet. So I often sort of feel that I won't be able to do the exercise right But I guess the flip side of that is, well, that's how it will be in life, and maybe it's the only way to get the correct activation. Because I can feel some activation through it when I do an open chain exercise and it feels okay, but it doesn't translate to life. Like, I still can't step and balance properly as a result. So yeah, I guess it makes me sort of challenge that thinking around, maybe you have to do more of that closed chain stuff and just confine it to like a low range. With the bird dog, I believe I spoke about it on another episode that my elbows are hyperextending, which really freaked me out in the video I realized that in. Basically, to try and address this, I've tried a bunch of things that didn't work, like just how to cue it, but what did work was basically just going back to my hand, right, palm on the ground. I've been having my fists on the ground because I have wrist pain, and that way I can keep my wrists in neutral. But I guess it's not very stable, and it's sort of provided the opportunity for this hyperextension. To manage the wrist pain, I've sort of put something thin under my wrist, like under the actual like base of my hand, basically. That seems to help a bit. It is still a bit painful, so I'm not sure how best to manage that wrist pain, but it is definitely sort of reducing some of that hyperextension. And with that, it's feeling a little easier to depress the shoulder blades. So that's a good sign. And yeah, that about wraps it up for day 31. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.